All right. We are hitting it. Fast and Furious going live right on the dot, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard.
What
And
up?
what? That makes it noon? Noon for EST? Jamie,
One
what time is it
one
for you?
p what 1
It's
p.m.
1 p.m. There we go. See, math isn't math, and that's why you're here. Keep me honest. Welcome everybody for the end of the year wrap up, the 2024 STR market unwrapped, where the panelist right before me is going to sit down and discuss what has happened this year, some key takeaways, and highlighting some things that will go into 2025. And we did this webinar last year and it was super fun. So hence why we're doing it again. And I'm the only one that showed up in Christmas attire. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. I was really expecting some Christmas lights again wrapped around Alex, but
Nope,
we got what we got.
not
We
happening.
got what we got.
Not
All
Not
happening.
right.
happening.
Well,
We needed to make you look special, Will, and you do.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah.
very much. Well, some housekeeping items before we get into introductions and everything else. This is being recorded. So if you know that someone on your team or anybody else in the industry that needs to hear this and is not attending, you can get the recording at the end and send it out, and it will be sent alongside with the slide deck that we will have throughout this whole presentation. The chat is open. So use the chat, communicate with us if you have questions. There is a Q&A panel, or not Q&A panel, but a Q&A section that you can use as well, but we'll also be checking the chat. So make sure you're using both to engage in the conversation. There is a resources tab. And so with that, the Operto team alongside Whimstay, Wheelhouse, AirDNA have all done some collaborations throughout the year. So we're going to make sure that you have all the resources. There's going to be free downloads, playbooks, and all sorts of reports as well. So make sure you check all that out. And I think that is basically it. Today's conversation is about what these leaders are seeing from their business lens, and we are excited to kick off the agenda here with Alex. So let me get everyone to do some introductions before we kick off the actual presentations. Alex, we'll start with you, and in the order of who we saw on screen. There we go. Previously, and we'll kick off.
Thank you, Will. My name is Alex Aliotto. I am the co-founder and head of growth and partnerships at Whimstay.
Hi, everyone. Steve Davis, CEO of Operto. We're a guest management platform. I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Oliver Stern with Wheelhouse. I run our global sales. You'll see me all over the world representing. And delighted to step in for Andrew Kitchell, our CEO, who is out on paternity leave.
Happy holidays, everyone. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist and SVP of Analytics at AirDNA, a global short-term rental data and analytics company.
Love it. And I'm Will Slickers. For those that maybe didn't catch the beginning, I am the founder of Hospitality FM and Recreation Stays, a property management company with hotels and short-term rentals. So let's kick it off. Alex, you are the man to start everything off. We're going to go over this agenda really quick, but we're going to go over the booking landscape. We're going to cover building a revenue strategy, STR and vacation rental technology map that Wheelhouse and Operto put together, plus many other things, trends, impacts to the election, and of course, a great general Q&A. So here's the agenda. Get prepared, lock in your questions. And yes, as you're all doing in the chat, let us know where you're tuning in from. What type of property management company do you represent? Are you a host? Are you like a professional manager with over 50 or 100 units or homes? Let us know all that good stuff. We would love to know who's tuning in today. All right, Alex, now the floor is officially yours.
Thank you very much, Will. Hey, Carrie Powell, Traverse City, Michigan. What's up? I went to school in Ann Arbor, Carrie, so I'm familiar with the fabulous Traverse City. So what's up, you guys? My name's Alex Aliotto. As I mentioned before, I'm the only one who didn't mention what Whimstay does, and that's going to actually have some impact on what I'm talking about. So Whimstay is I'm going to go new-ish. We're not really new anymore. We are somewhat established, I would say, but we are an OTA, and we've got one job. Our job is to help hosts fill their unsold gap nights last minute. So we are a last-minute OTA. Booking windows. I am pretty sure everybody on this call that is a property manager or a host has, my guess is anecdotally, they are starting to see or have seen that booking windows are shrinking quite a bit. The question really at this point is it a trend or is this something that's forever? We're going to dig into that a little bit. The main question I would have for anybody on this call is, because booking windows have closed or are shrinking at the very least, do you have a last minute strategy? Really important, right? If you look at this little matrix that we built, if you were to have, let's say, let's say you had VRBO, let VRBO handle 180 to 90 days out. You let Airbnb handle 90 to 30 days out. But you have to have something to take that 30-day and under. You need to have some type of strategy, a diverse distribution strategy, but a strategy all the same. And hope is not a strategy, right? So I think by creating some type of discount on Airbnb and putting it out there, you're still in a sense hoping that somebody sees that discount. Hope's not a strategy, right? So I think what's really, really important as we see these booking windows close is, do you have a firm, established last-minute strategy? It doesn't have to be us. We are the only one that's doing it. But if there's another option out there that you want to take, do it. At the very least, though, make sure that you have something that is going to capture those last-minute travelers. So that's that part. Another thing that's really, really important, right? And this is something that we focus on. So 67% of all Whimstay travelers check in on off-peak days. And the average length of stay on those is 3 to 4 nights with an average spend of about $1,400. So these are not Monday to Tuesday and you're getting, it's a $200 stay. These are significant stays. So I think this is another piece to this that's happening that we need to make sure, property managers need to make sure, hosts need to make sure that that you are capturing, right? And we're going to get into the reason why last minute and weekdays last minute, filling in gap nights, why it's such an important piece to any distribution strategy moving forward. So here are some booking windows. So if you take a look at that on the right, most of these are going down, right? So the United States is 11.4% shorter or minus, than it was before. So according to key data, sorry, Jamie, booking windows are flat or falling across the US. So what are the reasons for this? The next gen traveler, we love this one. This is a really cool one because to us, Richard, how you doing? Nice to see you. Devon, UK. You see that UK is right there as well. Where do we have it? There you go. So your booking windows are shrinking too. But the next gen traveler, really important. This is what Mr. Chesky at Airbnb referred to as the golden age of traveler. Why is this sort of particular demographic so important? Number one, they're traveling about 7 to 8 times a year, as opposed to you got the baby boomer traveling maybe that one week long vacation to Hawaii a year. They're not traveling that way. They're traveling very differently. They're traveling 6 to 7 to 8 times a year. They're also traveling a lot. Now, if you look at sort of hybrid work, they're not traveling just for vacation. Let's say I'm in San Francisco and it's a Tuesday and I'm like, maybe I'll just go to Tahoe tomorrow and I can work there for a week. That's not a plaything. That is actually what's happening, right? So that sort of vibes with a lot of those weekday that are getting filled out. So the other thing to know about this traveler, very experiential, on Instagram, on TikTok all the time. Do they want to be on Instagram and TikTok and doing the selfies and look at what we're doing right now? Are they doing that in a 200 square foot hotel at the Marriott? Probably not, right? They want to be immersed in whatever the community is. And our industry has that, right? They want to have space. They want to be able to have a workspace. They want to have an outside potentially. So another reason, financial stress, lack of consumer confidence, right? So I think that a lot of times people are going to wait, right? And they're going to see there's a lot of uncertainty, particularly with the US elections. Jamie's going to talk about that a little bit. And then options. I think that people now understand that they have the options. Travelers are savvy, right? Now, there are always going to be those folks that want to book 90 days out. That is never going to go away. What we are talking about is kind of this new sort of a little bit more spontaneous minded traveler that are, number one, traveling last minute, and number two, choosing short-term rentals above anybody else. So it puts us, in my opinion, if you were to ask me, looking at the data that we see, it's probably our industry's strongest tailwind right now. This is just another piece to this, right? So these are the booking windows. Now I went to the good guys. I went to AirDNA. So booking windows are shortening. Lead times are shrinking. Guests are booking more last minute. The average lead time for a stay in June fell from 54 days in 2022 to 29 days in 2024. And then again, this is talking about something I just talked about. So leisure travel, remote, hybrid work trends. So do you have, I know that this sounds insane because everybody does, but do you have good Wi-Fi? Do you have an office space, right? Like these are really, really important things to make sure that you have, because these are the big reason. A lot of the reasons for these shrinking windows, but a lot of the reasons as well for the kind of the 67% increase in weekdays. So I think that's it for me. That is it for me. Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, just the way we like it. Way to
Short,
go.
sweet, and obnoxious. Yeah.
I'd love to pipe in on the next gen traveler and get you guys talking about that. So, all right, I talked to a lot of property managers. Some of them are these incredible legacy property managers who have 80% direct bookings. They've been going for 20, 30, 40 years. And then on the other end, you just have every operator who's trying to figure out their marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you guys think we are generationally in terms of the buying power of millennial and Gen Z aging into people who are making their vacation decisions? Because we still have boomers, Gen X above, who kind of do more traditional vacations, and I think a lot of people are still relying on them for occupancy. But I'm kind of curious, where are we in terms of an inflection point where that next gen traveler becomes the priority for marketing and getting people in your properties?
I mean, I think they should be now, right? And I that's what I think. And I think that how do you capture them is a good question, right? First of all, I'm just shooting this out there. I don't know. I don't know what their loyalty is like. I do know what the Gen X and the Boomer loyalty is like. I do know that they are very big on direct bookings. I don't know exactly what this generation is. I don't have that data quite yet, or I don't even know. But there's a lot to be said about making sure, I think it's why it's so important you're on socials, right? Particularly TikTok and Instagram. I'm really not, to be honest. So I'm sort of behind the curve on that. But I think that's really, really, really important. And then I think understanding some of the, I think understanding some of it is that this Gen Z, Gen Y, millennial, they like a good deal. They just do. They're a little bit more savvy about what's going on. A lot of time direct is the best deal. I think they'd be willing to check on those. So I don't know, but I think we are at the inflection point. I do think it's probably important to start to get in front of them now, because if they aren't, I want to say they spent in 2023 something like $370 million on travel alone. And they make up more than 50% of the buying population in the United States already. So
any other comments from the rest of the panel around that? I think it's a really great question.
I think I'd chirp in there. I mean, to sort of the last point made, we are at an inflection point. You're seeing a lot of the boomers they're in their traveling years, but that's going to fade out in the next sort of 5-ish years. The Gen Xers, I think, Alex, you and I are the Gen Xers on this call.
Yes.
We still travel that sort of traditional way of, that's the way we were raised, on the sort of 7-10 day vacations once or twice a year. But then, there's that huge generation coming up behind, which is experiential. They want to tell their friends about what they're doing and all the experiences they're having, and socials is just like an obvious one. I mean, really good question, Oliver. But I think, we are literally in that sort of 5 to 10 year transition period, and folks really need to get ahead of it.
I was going to say one thing from my perspective, and I know we've talked about it, Jamie, on podcasts and a couple other things that we've heard on other stuff, but how this generation uses influencers as their kind of source of truth in a lot of ways with travel and trips and the news, where they're getting their political information, where they're getting their just entertainment in general, which I think is pretty interesting. And I guess more of like a way of that inflection point going, maybe less traditional advertising and commercials on TV and radio to now a more like digital social kind of way of advertising. Again, influencers, something they could relate to, versus they can tell it's a paid actor or actress, right? Like on screen. So I don't know. I think that has kind of a weird additional kind of twist to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just going to shout out one operator I'm aware of who has a portfolio under 100 units, but has 148,000 Instagram followers. That's 38 beach girls. Just as one example of somebody who's really relied on socials to drive occupancy.
Great example. Great example. All right. Well, before we continue down that rabbit hole, I think it's a great conversation and definitely could go on like a whole webinar about it. But Jamie Lane, you are the next runner up. So what is the data telling us overall? Kick it off to you.
Great. So a big question we get today is, what does the election mean for the short-term rental industry? And what is our expectation for 2025 and 2026? And for us, as we sort of look at both analyzing historical performance and start looking at the future, it all sort of starts and ends with the economy. If people don't have jobs, if they're not spending, then we're not going to see the demand that we want. And as we sort of look, and what we show here is our forecast for the economy, sort of pre-election and post-election. There's sort of two things that stand out. One, if you look at the growth that we saw in 2023 and 2024, the economy is booming. We have seen above 2% GDP growth for now 2 consecutive years. Like, we're at unemployment rates of only 4.2%. We're adding 150 to 200,000 jobs every month. Like, the economy is definitely sort of firing all cylinders. And there is some worry with the recent election that we could start to overheat the economy again. So this updated forecast includes the assumption that we're going to see continued stimulus in the overall economy, that the 2017 tax breaks are going to continue and be re-upped, and that is going to add further stimulus to an already strong overall economy. If we go on to the next slide, you see what that expectation has done to interest rates.
Lost.
We might have lost some slides. Give me one second.
But what that slide's going to show is that one we've already seen that interest rates, 30-year fixed rates have gone up. So as the expectation of the Republicans taking not only White House, but the House and the Senate increased, we saw a subsequent increase in the overall 10-year Treasury and 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And that centers around an increased spending and that inflation is going to stay higher for longer. And that expectation has sort of creaked into that the Fed is going to keep interest rates higher as well. So now, what does that mean for the forecast? For supply, that means that we expect supply growth to continue to decelerate. So in this slide that we would be seeing, we would see 20% supply growth in 2022. So click on the next one. That decelerating to about 8 to 10% growth in 2023 and decelerating to only 7% growth in 2024. And our expectation, you see that in the shaded area, is that it decelerates further into 2025 and 2026. So for existing operators that are maybe get excited about less competition going forward, that's obviously a good thing. We're not going to be this environment of 20+% supply growth, of occupancies, continue to see further pressure. We do think the higher interest rates, coupled with higher home values and sort of still relatively weak RevPAR performance, is going to be a recipe for lower supply growth for longer. Next slide, you see
Amy,
how that's.
can I ask you a quick question? So are people
Yep.
going to be sort of that post 20, I think it was like a post COVID boom, and
Yep.
everybody was like, I want to be a part of this. And they started, they started to buy second homes before they were buying first homes, right?
Yep.
Are those people now starting to realize, well, this is not the market I thought it was, so there's going to start to sell off a little bit? Is that kind of what's happening?
We don't expect, if we go back one slide, we don't expect supply to go negative. So we're in an industry where there's always a lot of churn. So there's people coming in, coming out. But on net, we still see supply continuing to expand in 2024, 5 and 2026, just not growing at a strong rate.
And Jamie, on that, what type of supply are you seeing there? Is that urban supply? Is it,
Yeah,
budget,
Yeah.
luxury?
So the strongest supply growth we're still seeing is in small and mid-sized cities. So
Okay.
those are areas that didn't see home prices run up as much, and where there's still opportunities for investment that sort of pencil makes sense on a per pure cash flow basis.
Yeah.
In urban areas, we're actually seeing supply decreases right now, primarily from a few urban markets, few cities that have implemented new regulation. But in general, like if we look at the operating performance of urban markets, they're still the weakest relative to pre-COVID, still the weakest relative to weak relative to 2021. And a big piece of that is the lack of international travel recovery to the United States. So if we look at international travel to a lot of these major cities, so think New York, San Francisco, Miami, Chicago, Boston, we're still anywhere from 15 to 20% below 2019 levels of international travel.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. And those cities you were talking about that are thriving, those kind of, it's like those mid cities, right? Nashville, Chattanooga, stuff like that. Those are the ones that are thriving. Is the demand there too, or is just the supply?
Demand is there along with the supply. So the sort of give you guys the list of the fastest growing cities for supply this past year. You've got markets like Bloomington, Indiana, 35% supply growth, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, 23%, Indianapolis, Indiana, 30% supply growth, Buffalo, New York, 27%, Keelan, Texas, 25%, Cleveland, Ohio, 25%. Like it's clearly in this sort of mode of like, and these aren't super large metro areas. These are sort of small or relatively small to mid-size metros.
Those first two were college towns.
College towns, yep.
Yeah, cool. Sorry,
Right.
dude, I'll stop interrupting you.
Great questions. So, and Alex mentioned this sort of boom bust type cycle and this occupancy. So this is trailing 12-month occupancy over the past 6 years. We actually see that. So US was averaging about 56% occupancy in 2018, 2019. That accelerated up to almost 63% in 2021. And now we've seen 2 consecutive years up till 2023 of occupancies falling. And then the past sort of 3-4 months, we've seen a plateauing of occupancy at around 54%. So 54% compared to 63%, pretty massive decline in occupancy over the past 3 years, but not as low or as sort of stark when you compare it to 2018, 2019 levels. And with supply slowing and expected still at least decent demand growth, we expect occupancies to be increasing over the next 2 years and get back to that 56% level by the end of 2026. So next slide, you see all that sort of wrapped up into our forecasts, supply, demand, occupancy, ADR, and RevPAR. So RevPAR is what we take home to the bank, and that's the average revenue per available rental. You see 2022, 2023, we saw 2 consecutive years of declining RevPARs. And now 2024, we've reversed that a bit. Occupancy was flat in 2024. We did get some pricing power back. We saw about a 3% increase overall in prices. And what's fun about that 3% increase in prices is that's the average guest paid rate. So you take total revenue earned by the industry divided by all the nights that were sold, is about half split between larger, nicer homes being rented and actual pricing power. So we only saw on average rate that a host was charging increase by about 1% in 2024, while there was some what we call mix shift of larger homes being rented out. And on the next slide, you actually see that trend playing out of when we look at on the trailing 12-month basis, the number of available listings, or the change in available listings, and the change in demand. So this is a broad trend that we're seeing over this past year of more and more guests and more hosts offering and renting out larger homes. And then when we think about short-term rentals competing with hotels, so still 9 out of every 10 stays is happening in a hotel. This is where short-term rentals win in the type of lodging being rented out. And we see a big sort of shift towards larger groups, families, generation travelers, and that these are areas that people are really preferring short-term rentals. And that's it. We did produce a whole report on these trends that we've seen and are expected to see. And this just came out this week. And this QR code can take you to the report.
I love it. All right, group. What do we got? What do we got for Jamie? There's a lot. There's a lot of good insights. A lot of good data.
Guy also ad-libbed like a master. That was great.
He doesn't need
let's get some harder questions.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie, I got one. When you're forecasting and looking at macroeconomic factors and indices that will tell you how supply is going to change, how do you factor in hyper local changes like the threat of regulation, especially precipitous regulation?
No, regulation is a really tough one. We do not forecast what's going to happen in terms of regulation. And we just in this past year saw significant regulation come into New Orleans. Like, we did not anticipate that coming into that market. When we're forecasting supply change, and supply is such an important variable for understanding how a market's going to perform going forward. And one of the most important metrics we look at is current, and I call it investability. I think it's a made up word, but essentially, like, how profitable is investment today in that market? So we take what is average home value at a very local level. How are home values expected to change going forward? And we get forecasts of home values from Oxford Economics. What are expected? How much is it going to cost to get that debt? So what are current interest rates and how those expected to change? And then really importantly, what is expected cash flows for properties in that market? What are the revenues expected to be earned relative to the expected mortgage payments associated with those new properties? And we sort of look at it over time. We can see how that really strongly correlates with new supply growth. And then at a very local level, taking an expectation of how much supply do we expect and how much new investment do we expect to happen in that market, given the opportunity in those markets.
Fascinating.
Love it. Well, everyone was wanting the QR code put back up. So thank you, Nikki, for putting that back. And for someone put the link in there for a little bit, but it was in there.
I think we're sharing all the slides after the event too. So
yeah. Love it. All right. So next up we have Steve Davis, the one And
Hey
all
everyone. It's always exciting to go right after Jamie when he drops a lot of the data bombs and all this stuff, and then get to go back to basics and talk about some of the simple stuff that we're seeing our customers be really successful with. And yeah, I think that when you look back on the last year, maybe even longer, one of the things that we keep getting asked about, but we're seeing tremendous growth in is how are we actually making more money off the guests when they're staying with us. And that's not necessarily just taking more money out of their wallets, but it's about actually providing a better stay. So Nick, if you just want to advance the slide. So when you look at our industry versus hotels, and Jamie just said 9 out of 10 stays are still in hotels, so we have a lot to learn. And also coming out of the pandemic, a lot of folks who stay in short-term rentals have hotel level expectations when they stay with short-term rentals. So if you look at the way that hotels make money, 30% of their revenues, often even higher, are made by in-stay amenities. So the things that you're used to seeing when you check in, whether that's F&B, whether that's going to the spa, what have you. And when you look at short-term rentals, while it's growing, it's still got some room to grow. And if 15 to 20% right now are sort of the average around what we're making on sort of additional revenue on those stays. But how can we kind of learn from what we see in hotels and apply those to short-term rentals? And this is a question that we get asked a lot because a lot of folks are dipping their toe in the pool and trying to figure out how they're gonna do it. So next slide. Okay, so this is the big question, right? Is folks want to know, how much money am I leaving on the table? Because, when you look back again at what Jamie was just showing us, things are flat in a lot of markets. It's becoming a lot more difficult to make really good profits in short-term rentals, and we got to get really creative. Got to get really, understand the travelers who are coming to our businesses, and also making sure that we're catering to to that next generation of travelers, because they're looking for the cool things to do in town. They want the experiences, they want to be sharing, they want all of it. So how do we start to provide those stays for folks? Next slide. Okay, so how can we bridge that gap in 2025? It's really quite simple. And if for those folks who are at home and haven't really tried this before, we always say just get really back to basics and the simple things that make you happy when you're a traveler. Try those first, and then start to layer on complexity, because a lot of property managers, are one or two men or women shows, all the way up to sort of the bigger ones. So it's really about figuring out what are the ones that you can take on without adding too much operational headache to your business, but also, again, being able to capture more share of wallet. So for it to be successful, there's a couple of things you need. You need to really think about those recognizable offers, right? The most basic ones are the early check-ins, late checkouts. Some folks give those away for free, but a lot of the times it's a really good place to monetize guests, especially if they're arriving really early and you're going to have to move around cleaners and schedules internally. Offering people the ability to check in and start their stay, really popular. And so we always say that's a really good place to start. And the really important thing there too is making sure that if you're offering upsells, that you can actually deliver on them. A couple of STRs I've stayed in where I've actually requested an upsell, they've said, "Oh, we're really sorry we offer that. We actually can't deliver on that." So again, making sure that if you're going to offer it, make sure that you deliver on it, because if you don't, those are the kind of little slip ups that end up costing you that sort of 5-star review down to 4. And hey, I really wish that you could have offered that, and I thought that was part of the stay. So make sure that you can always complete the loop and do what you say you're going to do for the guest. Next slide. Okay, so everyone wants the basics. As I said, early check-in, late checkout. Great place to start. Great way to make extra cash. How are you communicating pre-stay and in-stay? I think this is really critical. So there's a variety of tools. We look after sort of pre, in-stay, and post-stay for the guest. But again, there's tools out there that help you to engage with guests and really get to understand why they're coming to your property. Okay, so are you using like an AI concierge? We're not going to get into AI today. Are you just giving them the basics of the stay, and this is where you can, these are the things that you need to know? Or are you going sort of that next step further and making them feel like you're actually giving them a concierge service? Can they make special, bespoke, or last-minute requests? These are things that get asked a lot. only offer these things again if you have the man or woman power to pull them off, because again, nothing worse than someone making a request saying, yes, we can absolutely do that, and fulfilling it in either not fulfilling it or not charging enough, losing money on that that upsell, or just delivering that experience in a way that wasn't actually that beneficial to the guest. You need to obviously understand who's coming to stay, right? So who are they? You know, if you can gather information on the traveler profile, are they coming for business? Are they coming with their family? Are they coming for a wedding anniversary, whatever? Those are great places where you can start to put in specialized upsells that really cater to that stay. And then also having a really comprehensive understanding of why people come to the town that they're coming to, right? What makes it special? What are those special what is a special sauce? And then going around and actually curating those relationships with the local vendors to make sure that you can be able to open up those doors for folks. Because again, when we look at that sort of traveler profile coming through now, you've got a lot of you know, the Gen Zs who are traveling and spending lots of money. They want to book direct, and they want to be able to do it conveniently and through, you know, one place. So again, if you can put out those options, really good place to make additional revenues. And then the last thing I would just touch on is this is a trial and error period process. You're not going to get it right on day one. So make sure that when you do put out upsells and folks are taking those on, do the follow-up, ask the questions. Hey, how was that? How could we have done better? You know, was there anything as a guest that you know, we want to make sure that the next guest is even happier? What can we do? This kind of information compounds, really knowing the consumer well in your market. So again, ask those questions, really important to get those data points. So if you look at your upsell strategy, look at it in tiers, okay? The top one is the pure profit, right? Plug and play, easy, you know, again, damage waivers, early check-in, the pet fees, the things that are sort of the no-brainers that if folks take you up on it is literally just cash in hand. Experiential, that's sort of low lift but high rewards, so sort of those mid-stay cleans, you know, getting that affiliate program going, local relationships, private chefs, et cetera, et cetera. And then the convenience layer, which is sort of the higher lift but lower margin. So you're not really necessarily selling it to make money, but you're really selling it to broaden the person's experience, and hopefully that will have the knock-on effect of, you know, great reviews, you know, word of mouth to friends, direct bookings, et cetera. So those are really the things that you know, things like welcome baskets or like hangover kits if you're in like Nashville or in Vegas. But the things I would consider sort of smaller details that are the things that separate your properties from another stay. If you can combine all three of these levels, when we look at our own customers at Operto, we're looking at, you know, 30% margins are standard, and that would be, you know, a really good result. Again, if you can capture an extra 40, 50, 60 bucks per guest during a stay, you've done really, really well. So again, dip your toe in the pool. Don't try and knock all these things off at once, and make sure you understand what you can actually deliver on, because the delivery is as important as the offer. So just to keep in mind as well. Okay, I think I'm done there. We're going to hand it off to Oliver to take us through the tech landscape. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Super, super interesting, Steve. Would love to pick your brain, but I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, totally. I was just missing that.
I'll keep mine short and sweet, y'all. I talk to hundreds of property managers every year, and some managers with 25 listings are very good at revenue management, and some with 500 listings are relatively inexperienced. So it's a discipline that is pretty new in the industry, and it's shifted from being pretty manual to being very tech-driven. One of the biggest trends I see, and I would add into the reasons that booking windows are shrinking, is people are still sort of high off of the boom years of COVID, post-COVID, and they're holding far future rates too high for too long. So when you're in a climate where oversupply is making people tend to shop last minute, something that compounds that is when they look 6 months in advance and everything's really expensive and they know they can wait. So two things I usually recommend to clients. One is you have to seasonalize your strategy. Basically, a competitive rate position 6 months before peak season is different than a competitive rate position 6 months before low season. The number one thing I see is people are booking in the last minute, and say it's an ADR of 100, and their far future rate for that time was an ADR of 300, and they didn't get booked. Well, what if you dropped that by 50% or 25% and brought that down to 225, 200? Your overall ADR for at least some of your bookings in that period is now higher than if you had just relied on last minute bookings. So ideally, you have some sort of pricing tool or way of representing your data across your portfolio where you can start to see the default a lot of people step into is they have one strategy that they apply across the whole year. And it actually crushes for some seasons, but totally doesn't for others. And the first way you can do this is by creating a very smart and tailored competitive set, benchmark that against your portfolio. And now that we're at the end of the year, look back across the whole year. Okay. For your 2 bedrooms, build a 2-bedroom comp set and see when did you win on RevPAR? When did you lose each month? And just overlay lead time or something about how far people are booking in advance. Usually there's a correlation between how far people got booked in advance and whether you beat the market or not. So basically the wisdom now is you have to manage revenue at every lead time, not just the 30 or 90-day window, but far in advance. And with that, get into distribution, right? Make sure your listings are constantly updated. Know when that Airbnb booking comes in versus that Whimstay booking, and optimize your revenue strategy accordingly. You have to win in how you distribute your listings now and not just throw a price up there and anybody's going to book it. So I'm going to give us a few minutes at the end to decompress and give it back to Will. But it's been great to chat. And that was our market technology map. There's always more tech, and it's hard to keep up with. So feel free to follow up and I can provide that to you after the show.
I'm a big fan of that tech landscape map. So highly recommend everyone pays attention and digs into it because it's actually really educational when you get, especially if you're maybe newer to the industry, you get some really fun rabbit holes to go down. But that being said, we are cutting it close on time. So we're going to try to keep the general discussions and everything kind of wrapped up and hopefully more bundled or properly put together, I guess. I don't know what the proper wording is for that, but we're going to go ahead and Jamie, I want you to kick it off on the impact of the election with short-term rentals. I know you've got the data on this, but obviously I think this is something that's been on everyone's mind. We've all been lingering, around the election, like, oh, what's going to happen next year? We're going to see more of this or less of that, blah, blah, blah. So, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Yeah. So I've got a webinar I'm doing on Friday with Verma on it, but the sort of, there's anything like, and I hear from all sorts of people of they're scared, they're excited, there's a range of emotions around the election outcome. And we can look at years, decades of travel data and what we know. And with all these changes in administrations, is people are still going to travel. People are still going to spend money. And that the world's probably not going to end, which is generally what we expect for short-term rentals. If you look at how our forecast has changed, we have slightly increased our occupancy outlook. And that's a direct result from the election of, we do expect fewer new rentals coming in. And we talked about the investment outlook sort of coming down some of higher interest rates for longer, a bit more demand from stronger economy. And that's directly related to changes in the overall economy from the election, our expected changes. And then there's risk too. China was the number 4 country for inbound guests to the United States up until 2016. And from 2016 to 2019, we saw almost a 15% decline in international guests from the trade war that we started with China. And if we expect sort of increased tariffs and potentially more adversarial sort of conflict with our trading partners, that could directly impact travel to the US, as international guests have a lot of options on where they might travel. So all to say, I expect some positive things from the election outcome and some negative things from the election outcome. But in the end, we're still have a very positive outlook for the industry going forward.
Thank God. I was gonna say if you didn't.
Whew.
Whew, all right, we made it through that. But well, no,
Did,
it's really
did, did
interesting.
I did I make it
Go
through
ahead.
that without pissing anyone off?
Probably
I
not.
was gonna say,
Jamie is a master stroke, really. Master stroke.
Well, and if you look at the anecdotes in the chat, I think it's across the board, right? So
Yeah.
it really is mixed. And I think what Jamie is bringing is some of the more macro level data driven insights about travel,
yeah,
which that's just the facts. So fascinating. And I know, Jamie, you're speaking on this on Friday. So
yeah. Shameless plug for that. I know Jamie's going to be speaking on a webinar for VRMA about this for about an hour. So definitely go sign up if you're interested in learning more. We do want to say thank you, and we had some extra time left, I think, for some Q&A. Nikki messaged me in the chat if we are incorrect on that, but would love to open up for some quick Q&A to kind of cover some topics I think everyone was excited about. And one of them, maybe to start off with, is the one that we saw in the Q&A section by Navin, who says, what are the top upsell opportunities other than early check-in or check-out or late checkout? And I know for us, like, it's a little bit different, but maybe to open up to what you guys have heard from your clients. But we have like two really good upsells that I like for our company. One's a virtual kind of digital concierge, flat fee. Your whole trip, we'll book you whatever, dinner reservations, all the stuff. Like, we will pretty much take that concierge service above and beyond. We'll get you a rental car, we'll book you a chauffeur, or whatever you want. And that's a really good one that actually gets picked up quite often with the additional, which I had, but I forgot. So I'm going to go look through my Slack again and go see what that upsell was, because I know it's in our team chat. But what kind of upsells are you guys hearing? I know you guys, Oliver, you talk to a lot of operators every day as well. So go ahead.
I do. Yeah. So my favorite new one this year, you guys, is called Why Hangry. And Why Hangry is a Y Combinator Silicon Valley graduate, but they're super bullish on centralizing private chef access and helping people realize that the average cost for a private chef per person is like $47. So they're trying to work with property managers right now to have basically a plugin where people can book private chefs through their checkout experience.
Private chefs is a really popular one. Alex, I'd be curious, what would be like a upsell that would sell you, like something that you would buy if you were offered?
I love the plug and play that Steve talked about, because it's so, the PDP or whatever it is, it's so really simple. I'm not a property manager, so I don't know. But then there's the other part to this I love is the thing that makes this industry unique is how localized it is. And so I think that, like, I know it's a little bit of a longer burn, a little more long tail, but I really think that, and I know property managers love direct bookings. I think that the best way to get, and by the way, direct bookings help everybody, including OTAs. So I know that seems sort of counterintuitive, but when somebody has a really wonderful experience at a certain place, they'll come back to that place. If they don't come back to that place, they'll probably want to go. They will definitely choose a short-term rental next time, just because the hospitality game was so great. So those kind of long tail efforts of being very localized. So the idea of the hangover kid in Nashville and Vegas, or, if you're in the Central Valley of California, or if you're in Santa Rosa, maybe a 4-pack of Pliny the Elder IPA or something that's sort of localized, right? I like Pliny the Elder. Then I think that to me is, I think, the one that's got a long tail effect, also tends to help the industry a little bit.
I love that. I really love that. The other one that I had a brain fart on was AI. We use Bestie AI to message our guests to extend their stays, to add a night on early or later, depending on the messaging cadence. And for us, I think that's been a big, significant revenue driver. I know we were trying to go this whole webinar without mentioning AI, but it's low hanging fruit. It's super easy. It's that top tier pyramid that Steve showed on that slide, which I loved as well, because I think it's, again, the low hanging fruit is the stuff that people usually don't go for some reason. It's like, oh yeah, like we know it. Like, we know to add a late checkout fee or early check-in fee, or like, oh yeah, but like, just do it. And it actually compounds over time, as Steve also said in his presentation as well. So I think it's really really good tool for easy money. Easy money. Looks like we have questions. Sorry, I'm reading the chats. Anonymous 10D, and then looks like maybe Kelly or Kathleen Kelly. You keep raising your hand on the panel, so if you have something, throw it in the chat or in the Q&A. How much, actually, let's go to anonymous attendee. I've noticed a shift in guest demographics at our urban properties this year. Are there specific data points we should be monitoring to adapt to changing guest preferences? I'm assuming data, or not data. Jamie, this is a question geared more towards you.
Yeah, and there's some things we track in our data, like size of properties, type of properties, where guests are coming from, that you can and clearly and see in the data. And as like one of my favorite examples now is like, yes, we've seen a drop in Chinese travelers coming to the US, but we've seen a massive increase in Indian travelers coming to the US. And if that's a trend that you're seeing in your market, you may want to adapt what you're offering for those type of travelers to make your properties more attractive to get them to book. And that's something where you could clearly see that trend, adapt your property, and see subsequent increase in bookings. So yeah, there's rice cookers is a great one. And it was a trend that we saw sort of in the mid 2000s of more international travelers coming to the US. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, maybe instead of a coffee machine, I need a hot water kettle because people are making tea instead of coffee. So simple things like that can make your property more attractive to a certain type of guests.
Really like that.
Yeah.
And then
Also,
one
go ahead, Will. I was just going to say, focusing, like, I really like what Steve said, and I feel like it plays into what Jamie just shared, which is as you're scaling as a property management company, one of the challenges is most often your supply, your inventory is decentralized, right? You don't just have it all in one building. There are some urban operators who have some of those advantages, but therefore you don't have like on-site concierge, and you can't just run to the supply closet and grab something if it's requested. So figuring out the most important things to your guests and having them ready, like Steve is saying, ahead of time, and just building. Once you can absolutely deliver on a few upsells, a few extra services, things like that, expanding outwards, but start with things you know you can reproduce, especially over the entire area you're operating in, which is often quite large, right?
100%. And Amanda had a question about the concierge service, and for us the reason why we liked it was because it's low-hanging fruit in the terms of it's digital, and we can offer it through many different apps. You can use Uber, you can use TaskRabbit, you can use a lot of different other ones, and the 250 is really profitable for us. It's a good margin, and it's a fee that most guests are willing to pay. So pretty much all we got there. Oh, we got some more. Kim Roberts, based on this data in the webinar, have y'all seen an industry increase or decrease in management fees? Currently charging our owners 25% commission, but starting to get some pushback on that for the first time. So I will say for us, we're not getting pushback because we list out and we have like a display of what we offer in this service and like what our costs are and what services we pay for the owners, and kind of show them a ton of things that go into that 25%. So we don't get as much pushback anymore, but that's just us.
I'll make a comment around with Airbnb's recent release of co-hosting, where a lot of property management is now getting pieced out of like where you can pay for specific aspects of property management, maybe just the cleaning, just the pricing, just the guest communication. That is or could be something that starts to put pressure on property management fees of, I don't want to pay 25% for everything. Could you like and charge me a little bit less if I don't want these aspects of your property management? And the ability to get that and should or could put further pressure on those fees.
Really good point.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, y'all, I just saw an Airbnb announcement where they're going to start allowing guests to request to book outside of your availability. So think ahead, right? I mean, lead times could increase marginally there, but people will start asking to book 12, 14, 18 months in advance.
Guest cottages asking, how should property managers go about closing large gaps in different properties, especially in the off season? So anyone got recommendations on that? Alex, this sounds like a perfect question for you.
Yeah, let me look at this. So closing large gaps in different properties finally in the off season. Well, I think I'm going to answer this correctly. I hope I do. I think off season, I think the elimination of shoulder season is something that we are going to start to specifically market to. And I think people should, because I think there's a lot of opportunity simply because of hybrid work now. So I don't know if I'm going to answer this one correctly. I think that one of the things that is, if you live in a place like Lake Tahoe, where April is off season, but it's still gorgeous, it's still 62 and beautiful, and you can play golf there. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity to bring people in on that. We had an instance with a specific property manager in Miami. They had their strongest month on Whimstay in July and August, which is their two slowest months. So a lot of that has to do, I think, with just people, I think, marketing to people and saying, hey, there's no time you can't come to you're working from home, just not your home. So I don't know if that's a marketing piece you want to look at, but it's certainly something that we are finding in our data is kind of closing the gap on shoulder season itself. I'd love an elimination of shoulder season altogether. I don't see why that's something we can't do. Seriously. It's, I mean, people don't have to go into office anymore. There's simply no reason why people can't choose to go and spend something in a drivable market during a time that might be mud season in Park City or whatever it is.
Hopefully Oliver can solve this problem with price.
Yeah. Just about how much you discount and whether you have a setting in your pricing tool that allows you to reduce by a margin if you're not already hitting your minimum price. I think it's also just a property management issue. I used to be the director of owner services at one. Some people just have a communication culture at their PMC where they're held a little bit hostage by their owners. Some have a lot more control, but getting your minimum prices down, dropping rate ahead of time, and having policies that basically understand the trade-off of rather than try to get booked in the last week on that gap, why not the last month? What do you have to lose? Booked occupancy is more valuable than vacancy. So sounds obvious, but it's actually really hard to operationalize and create a strategy property to property, season to season.
Really well said. Well, we're right at that time of the webinar where it is time to say goodbye and thank you. I just want to say, Alex, Oliver, Steve, and Jamie, you guys brought some great insights, some great data, some great point of views and perspectives. So I really want to say thank you for taking the time to share all of this today. For the attendees, we want to say thank you so much for spending the last part of 2024 with us on this amazing webinar where we get to share and geek out a little bit with you guys. So we want to say thank you again for tuning in. Make sure you grab the recording, share with your friends, your family, everybody in between. And of course, have a safe and happy holiday and new year. We'll see you all in 2025. Thank you.
Guys.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody.